I'm rejected as a person. Let me explain something. As a leader and in sales, there's a difference between rejection and refusal. Okay? What you're doing is you're getting refused on the telephone. They are not rejecting you as a person. They're not saying, man, I really hate that Gabe guy. I can't wait till he calls me and I'm just going to slaughter him on the phone. No, that doesn't happen. They don't know who you are. So when you get a no, you're simply getting refused. Rejection, true rejection, would be like if you went home for a holiday and there was a note on the door. You were going to have a reunion and there was a little note on the door that said, "Dear Sana, leave us alone. We no longer love you." Okay, that is rejection. Okay, that's the people know you and they don't like you. So try to separate that in your head a little bit. And if you're making calls and you get slammed, you know, how many of you have been slammed on the phone? Yeah, you have. A couple of you have, most of you. Well, tell yourself this, just kind of laugh and go, I just got refused. That takes some of the sting out of it. Remember how we were picking words in one of our earlier calls? There's one word and here's a better word for it. Well, you just got refused, that's all. So you could stand up in your workspace and go, hey, I just got refused, and then sit back down and continue. Although that would be disruptive, don't do that. All right, a third irrational belief. Number 3, let's see. Some salespeople that I've talked to believe that failure is something to be ashamed of. Like they feel terrible about it because they feel the need to be perfect. I won't have you raise your hand if you're in that category. But let me tell you this, write this down. Life is built on failures. Life is built on failures. You know, last night we were talking with the Perth team in Australia, and Anthony, you know, Tony, he's got a little baby boy, right? And I use the example of a baby boy, his son learning to walk was sometimes crashing into things, sitting down, falling over, bumping into walls. And that, you know, if a baby just gave up and said, you know what, Dad, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm tired of failing. Then none of us would be walking right now. So babies are very, very resilient, but they don't have a huge fear of failure. We have to move forward and accept that this isn't anything to be ashamed of. And so write this down. I'll give you another item you've heard of before, a nice saying from NLP. There is no failure, only feedback. There is no failure, only feedback. Right? So I remember I ran and tripped and hit my head on a coffee table, and now I have a little permanent scar right here on my eye, just a tiny one, but I got some good feedback about how not to do that again. So there you go. So those are 3. There are probably more irrational beliefs, but everybody adopts beliefs. Some are true, some aren't. Those 3 aren't necessarily true, but you may have them buried deep in your subconscious. So great leaders use affirmations to bolster their belief. Let's talk about a couple more athletes. I think of Muhammad Ali. If you remember Muhammad Ali, he had unbelievably powerful beliefs in his boxing skills. His affirmations were not just, his mind gym was not just an internal thing, but he verbalized it to the world. If you ever saw interviews with him, he would get with the press and he'd say, all of his stuff was personal, powerful, and it was also in the present tense. And I got a few quotes from him because I think he was the greatest. And he declared it, I am the greatest. But he said, it's a lack of faith that makes people afraid of meeting challenges. And I believe in myself. He said, to be a great champion, you must believe you're the best. If you're not, pretend you are. Okay? He said, pretend you are. They'll fake it till you make it. He was the heavyweight champion of the world for a number of years. He said, I'm so bad, I make medicine sick. That's pretty bad. And he also said this, I'm just throwing out quotes here for fun. He said, there are only 2 greats in the world, Britain and me. So there you go. He was a man overflowing with belief and confidence. And so he spent a lot of time in the gym, you know, working out. getting strong. So that was obviously a huge factor, just like with Katie Ledecky. But the other thing that made him really, really good was he pictured what he wanted to happen. He did not allow any fears to come into his mind, right? So some of you are thinking, well, I'm not Muhammad Ali. This is sure. I mean, that's great for him, but look at me. Another way you can kind of boost your belief level mentally is just tell yourself day by day, in every way, I'm improving in this area. Day by day, in every way, I'm improving. Now, your brain can believe that. If it's like, I'm going to be the greatest clothier in the history of mankind, that may be a big bite to chew off if it's your third week doing this. But the fact is, if you say, you know what, day by day, in every way, I'm getting better at what I'm doing, then you can believe that for sure. So some of us run a video in our heads before we make our calls or before we walk into someone's office for a sales meeting. And my question is this: have you ever anticipated failing? Have you ever thought to yourself, I don't know if this is going to work, or I'm not really organized, I'm not ready for this. Or you were kind of pictured hearing a no if you had your headset on and you were making calls. You may have heard a no in advance, and guess what? It came to pass. That's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy. So write this one down. Here's more wisdom, and it's true. We don't get what we want. We get what we picture. We don't get what we want. We get what we picture. So my charge to you is you should always work out in your mind gym before the day begins. I know Yana is very steadfast about doing that. When we were talking last night to Manila, I looked at the workstations behind the guys, and I encouraged them to start putting up some motivational quotes or their goals or something where they could see and be inspired in between calls. Because if you're just like strapping on a headset going, here we go, call number 79, it doesn't work. It doesn't last. You need to be in the right mental state before you start and during the day. So I know that Levi and a couple of guys that I talked to had really done a good job of plastering the walls because they needed to see visual evidence to give them more belief. And when they had belief, then they had confidence. And when they had confidence, then they made more sales, right? So you don't get what you want, you get what you picture. So I would spend time picturing what you want to happen the night before, okay? And ask yourself questions. I wonder where I'll be sitting in that client's office. That just gets your mind in the right direction. Or I wonder how fast I can establish rapport with this guy. Bam, Not, I sure hope he's nice and he buys something. No, you have to control your thoughts. You got to run through your calls and meetings in advance before they happen. Does that make sense? That makes sense. It's absolutely true. So I am for you signing up for the mind gym and going into your own mind and visualizing your week. What kind of week do I want to have? Okay. I know this, when I found this book some years ago and my daughter was playing softball, Katie, I said, Katie, we're going to start working out mentally. She's like, oh, Dad, I don't want to work out mentally. And I go, you don't even know what I'm talking about. So what we did was we got out this book and we would read a chapter a night, just a chapter a night. And it was so perfect. One was called Between the Ears, which is what we're going to talk about next week. Know your numbers. Don't shirk the work. But it's all about how it's not just about athletics. It worked perfectly in the sales arena too. But what we did with her, she not only read a chapter each night, but before she went to sleep, she had a big game coming up. I said, Katie, here's what you need to do. You need to run through your game in your mind before tomorrow happens. And so she did that. She actually would spend some time before she fell asleep kind of thinking about where she wanted to hit the ball. She became the greatest hitter on the team. She was all district, and her record still holds at the school where she graduated from, because she told me yesterday, I was telling her she saw the book out because I was doing these calls. She said, I remember that book, Dad. So the mind gym, that mental rehearsal is so key, but so few people do it. It's unbelievable. They just show up for work and go, gee whiz, I hope things go well. Or, please, God, give me sales. You know, that's fine. I would do that, but I would also spend time rehearsing mentally. I hope I've driven that point home. Okay, one other thought, couple quotes. And I know Yoni will appreciate this, even though I don't think he's on the line now, but we're talking about Major League Baseball. There was a guy named Rod Carew, one of the best hitters of all time. And he said this: do you believe that you're a starter on the team or a bench warmer? Somebody sitting on the bench watching. If you shut out, he said, all the mental distractions and focus, there's no telling how good you could be. So that is the truth. And this notion of belief, it comes from inside of you. And so I'm going to encourage you to do those mental rehearsals before you start work. And during the day, if you need to take a few minutes to kind of re-bolster who you are and what you're about and the fact that you're good at what you do, that's a great thing. I remember a cartoon years ago from, it was Dennis the Menace, and none of you probably know what that is, that little character. But Dennis the Menace was standing and looking up at Santa Claus, and he was asking him a question. And the question was, do you believe in yourself? Which is kind of fun. So anyway, Willie Mays, I'll give you my last quote. I'm just so full of quotes today. I'm going to stop. I've got more. Willie Mays, another great hitter in baseball, said, what you are thinking, what shape your mind is in, will make the biggest difference of all. So what you're thinking, what shape your mind is in, not your skill levels, but what is your mind in shape, what shape your mind is in, that will make the biggest difference of all. So I go forth and rehearse mentally. Go to your mind gym, think, believe, be confident. Okay, I'll stop it. I'll cut it off here. Does anybody have a thought, a quote, an example of the self-fulfilling prophecy when you either didn't believe and that came to pass, or you did believe and that came to pass in a different way? Any thoughts? Okay. All right, excellent. All right, fine. Well, you're all full of belief. I believe in you. So go out and go forth, be productive today. Find those new clients. You'll win money. And we will talk again next week. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in the August meetings, wherever you are in the world. Should be fun. Okay. I'm out. Bye. Insert music.